right, so we are here to review the observation that we did last Thursday afternoon during your writing block. And what we kind of talked about during her observation was that you were trying to make that transition from personal narrative into the realistic fiction.
Correct.
And during the lesson, the kids were specifically working on creating that character and then trying to create a problem off of that. How do you feel that went overall?
I think overall it went pretty well, considering it wasn't our normal writing block time. It was a shorter time, end of the day. I think they got the concept of the sheet where I had them like think of things that your character will like and dislike and not be good at, and be good at just because they could relate it to themselves. The problem thing I think was a little bit trickier. Some of them, their problems I wasn't the biggest fan of. So we kind of went back and looked at those on the second day, the day after you guys came in. So
okay, so that problem piece was a little more difficult for them. But I mean, even before you had them do the problems, you went over like the mentor text that you had read the day before, and then kind of modeled it for them. And during that piece of the lesson was probably the piece where you did ask the most questions. Do you think that like the questions that you asked from the mentor text to, you know, what they were doing, trying to create that problem, was getting deep enough for them, or do you think that you made the connection between?
I think I did, just because it was the first day we were talking about the problem, and relating back to Peter's Chair the day before was really the only book we had looked at prior to that day of like what are problems. I don't know if there's a better way of having them come up with problems than the way I did it. We definitely have spent way more time now after that day looking at problems that a kid could have. And really making a list. We added to our list of the one idea, and we tried to focus on like little things. Like your problem might just be that you broke your mom's dish. It doesn't have to be this big, huge bullying problem.
Yeah, or listening.
Yeah, and like so I think that going back to it helped. Referring to Peter's Chair I think was simple because the text was really, really simple. My questions, I don't know what other ways I could have asked the questions, I guess, to get them thinking about Peter's Chair. Like it was kind of just a quick review, like we read this yesterday, like remember the problem, remember what happened, how did he feel? I think.
Maybe just doing that with more books, you know,
and we're looking at a couple more times,
like what you said
books, that have a problem in it that the character ends up solving or not solving. And
I noticed that you did write some of that stuff on your post-observation form too. Okay. So you used that, they had written the one problem that they thought of in their notebook. And so that was really you used rushed. That specifically?
Like at the end.
Towards the end of the day,
And that's what we kind of came back to the next day, because I wanted them to quick write something down, because then half of them the next day will say, oh, I don't remember. So it was good to just
that was
jot
a
it
strategy to bridge
even though
to
they
the
had
next
like
day.
30 seconds.
Okay. So were you able to use that, we talked a little bit about you wanting to differentiate more so in like a group. Were you able to use that to kind of determine like, which kids had gotten the problem and which kids hadn't, you know, created one for their
The ones who struggled that day, that 30 seconds they had to quick write down their problem, like who were just sitting there with that blank look on their face, and I had to kind of ask the question again and again. I have polled, and they have been the ones at my table the last like 3 days. And my student teacher has pulled a group too who just need that focus. And it's really been helpful because now we've thought of a problem, and when they picture planned, I made them like tell me specifically like what they were going to even draw and explain what the problem, like the process, the character was going to go through with their problem before they even drew. So we like did baby steps of like draw the picture, and now we just started writing today our first story.
So probably in those small groups that you pulled based on the sample from the day before, you probably did a lot more deeper questioning, you know, as to what their problem would be. So on a more individual basis. During your lesson, one of the things that stuck out to me was the differentiation. You know, going from the carpet and then the kids working independently at their desks, and how you kind of circled the room and walked around and made a point to talk to all of the students. And there was that group of special ed students that went and worked with the aide. And I loved how you went over and you actually talked to them twice. I thought that was great because a lot of times, you know, the kids go with, you know, the special ed teacher, the special ed aide, and then the regular teacher doesn't. You can check in to see where they are, but I think that gave you so much good information to know, you know, where to go next with them. So there was a good amount of differentiation there, and with your student teacher walking around too. The couple of students I saw struggling working independently, you went back to, so by the time everyone was finished, was that 5 minutes and then you give them 3 more? Yeah. Everyone had, down on the paper.
What I saw, I think they did.
Good.
Like, as far as I know, they did.
And then it sounds like you were able to take the information that you had from the end to differentiate even more, so that grouping is working for you?
It is, so far. I'm still kind of struggling to figure out where to go next. Just because now I'm going to look at their piece that they actually wrote, and then I feel like I might get the groups based off of that. The plans, the groups that I pulled right now, I don't think will totally stay the same. And I fear that there's like 3 kids that I'm going to have to like permanently have with me. Because like October is not going to get anything down unless she keeps, okay, what's next? What are you going to do next?
Are some of those kids the kids that were working with the aide? Or are they kind of off on their own?
One of them, Dylan, will be.
Okay.
And he usually goes every day when it's that independent rate time with Mrs. Yankel.
Now, was that normal? Would she do that every day? Is she there for that time?
Yeah, usually.
Okay.
She goes across the hall, and I think she pulls a few from Amy's room. Like,
okay. So you could possibly think about utilizing
yes.
her
and I
for those
try
kids
to
that
keep
need it
him
every
with
day.
me like at least 1 or 2 days so I can really see what he's doing. And then like CJ just permanently comes to my table because she wants to, and I don't want to fight that because that's her workspace and she likes to be there.
She works better there.
So, yeah,
well,
so
I mean,
like that's
a good
fine. So she's
differentiation.
like always there.
So.
So and it works just with having like stuff in there too to pull other people. So
okay, so you're feeling a little more comfortable with that differentiation piece, but kind of wondering where to go next.
I'm gonna, I think I'm gonna have to look at like this first story that they write, and then get my groups from there. Like who needs work on details, who needs work on punctuation.
Okay. Because they'll be writing more than one story.
Yeah.
Okay.
They'll keep writing stories till like through the first week of December. So.
Okay. Specifically in reference to the questioning, did you have any questions about the data that we collected or anything that stuck out to you? Not really. I know you specifically asked about like the wait time.
Yeah.
And maybe your responses to that. And you always waited at least 3 to 5 seconds, which is recommended. And then anytime that you did give a scaffold for them to, you know, further their questioning or go a little bit deeper, it was after 5 seconds. So you definitely gave a good amount of time there for them. And you know, we wanted to focus on questioning, and in the lesson I think there wasn't necessarily a whole lot of really good opportunities, but you did ask, you know, 3 different Bloom's taxonomy, you know, up to the synthesis and analysis even, so I thought that was good even just for the small amount of questions that you were able to ask. But in those small groups then, you'll be able to
and that's
go
I was
a little farther
envisioning
with
like
that.
oh, you'll be watching me when I'm like, I didn't even do
Right.
any small group stuff. You know, like I'm thinking like how it usually looks in Writer's Workshop. And then like, well, the beginning of this unit, like the full like first 4 or 5 lessons, I really slowed down instead of just like throwing into the wolves, like, okay, now write it. Like we spent a whole day like talking to partners about our picture plan and like just getting that language. Like just keep telling people about your story. I'm crossing my fingers that that'll help their story just have more.
Well, I think it's, you know, it's like you mentioned a couple of things, the time of the day with the switcheroo and all that kind of stuff. And then it was a very short amount of time, but I would elaborate on what Jessica was saying, that the kinds of questions that you asked and even the wait time that you were able to do was really pretty good. I think that, you know, what would be interesting then is to, you know, do another observation when writing's at the normal time, and then kind of see, to elaborate a little bit on what we see too in terms of your small group polling and talking through some of those. But, you know, some of the questions that you asked were, I mean, there were some